It was a surprise to me to hear President Biden talk about a possible visit to Central Asia. President Biden announced also in New York that there would be a C5+1 meeting here in Uzbekistan probably next month. The Biden administration actually believes that the time is right to repeal the Jackson-Vanik amendment, and we've issued record numbers of visas for Uzbeks who are traveling to the United States. Uzbek travelers who are trying to do this are being turned away, which means they may have sold their houses or spent a lot of money for no reason whatsoever.
Some of the green card lottery winners, applicants, could not get the chance to have the interview with the embassy. What will happen to them?
Uzbekistan has been one of the top countries in terms of applying for the green card lottery. Because we don't want slots to go unused, more people win the lottery than are of slots that are available. And even when you get the interview at the U.S. Embassy, there's no guarantee that you get the green card visa as well. You know, the United States government and the government of Uzbekistan have a very similar policy towards Afghanistan. So clearly there have been some real improvements in terms of freedom of media and freedom of expression. President Mirziyoyev has been very, very clear in his public statements about his support for freedom of media. Despite the president's statements, we've still seen some pressure against journalists.
Mr. Ambassador, we're honored to have you here on the program. And thank you very much for coming over for the interview.
My pleasure to be here.
I would like to start our talk by focusing on President Mirziyoyev's recent visit to the United States. What can you say about it? How productive was the visit?
I think the president had a very productive visit. He spent, I think, several days in New York. I'm not familiar with his full schedule, but I saw from social media that he had a number of productive meetings with U.S. companies, private sector companies. He obviously participated in the United Nations General Assembly, delivering an address there. And then, as you know, he also had a meeting with President Biden in the C5+1 format, together with the other presidents of Central Asia.
During the C5+1 summit just you mentioned, President Biden said that the U.S. is increasing the amount of security funding to Central Asia. What are the reasons for that? Does the U.S. see possible threats in the region?
President Biden and Secretary Blinken have been listening very closely to our partners here in Central Asia, and we know that the countries of the region continue to have concerns about security and stability, particularly coming from threats potentially coming from Afghanistan. And so as we continue to work with each of the countries of the region, we determined that it made sense to continue to invest additional U.S. resources on security issues. Issues like border security, issues that strengthen our ability to counter terrorism together.
As part of his speech, President Biden also said that he could possibly visit one of Central Asian countries in the near future. How likely is this to happen? And if the visit takes place, which country do you think he will be coming to?
It was a surprise to me to hear President Biden talk about a possible visit to Central Asia. As you know, no U.S. president has visited Central Asia so far. So I don't know what's on President Biden's mind. If he said it's possible, of course it's possible. But I don't know of any specific plans to visit Central Asia or which countries that the president would plan to visit.
Could you comment on the results of this meeting, C5+1? What areas of cooperation did they agree to develop bilateral relations between the Central Asian countries and the United States?
Mm-hmm. Well, first, I think, as you know, and maybe your viewers know, the C5+1, this diplomatic platform between the United States and the countries of Central Asia started in 2015 in Samarkand, in fact, and we've had regular meetings in the C5+1 format since then. But I think it's fair to say that since the Biden administration began, there's been an intensification of activity in the C5+1 format. We've had, I believe, 5 separate ministerial level meetings in the C5+1 format during the Biden administration. And now, of course, the first ever meeting at the presidential level of the C5+1. And so, first and foremost, I think it's fair to say that this represents a real commitment, increase in commitment, and a strengthening of the platform and the relationship between the United States and the countries of Central Asia. In terms of the actual results of this particular meeting, it's important to look at this, I think, in the context of how the platform's been developing. When the platform, when we first established it back in 2015, it was mostly just an opportunity for us to have a dialogue with the countries of the region. Shortly afterwards, we decided that we needed to, add some more content, more substance. There needed to be more activities to strengthen the cooperation on the areas that we had identified as important. And so we established 3 working groups under the C5+1. The first working group is on economy. The second working group is on energy and the environment. And the third working group is on security issues. And these working groups now have been working for years on a range of programs in all of these areas. Just a couple of years ago, we established for the first time a secretariat of the C5+1. And so the secretariat meets usually virtually on a regular basis with representatives from all 6 countries, keeping track of progress on various activities, identifying new priorities. And so this work of the working groups and the secretariat has been ongoing. And as a result of the meeting in New York, they discussed some new, first of all, they discussed a range of issues. They did, again, as you mentioned already, they discussed security issues, and President Biden announced additional resources for security issues. They discussed energy security, things like the need for clean energy, the need for energy security for all these countries, the advantages of connecting the energy networks of the region, the advantage of having connections between the countries of this region and other regions as well. There was discussion of the economic issues, the need to improve the business environment in the region, in these countries, in order to attract more foreign investment, including U.S. investment to the region. And in that regard, President Biden announced there would be the creation of a C5+1 private sector platform to continue to work on the business environment and attracting investment to the region. Also in the economic area, they discussed the need to strengthen the connectivity between Central Asia and world markets. And this is an issue we've been working on for a number of years now, but the need particularly to strengthen the transit and transportation corridors, including over the Caspian and to Europe. And so we've got a number of programs in that area as well. President Biden announced also in New York that there would be a C5+1 meeting here in Uzbekistan probably next month. That would be hosted by USAID Administrator Samantha Power, probably together with participation from the other Central Asian countries. And again, one of the topics that meeting would focus on would be this transportation corridor. And then we also talked about human rights issues and the human dimension. President Biden talked about the need to continue to strengthen civil society, the need to work on women's empowerment throughout the region. And President Biden also talked about how useful it would be to introduce disability and inclusion as an area where the C5+1 could do additional work. And then another result that came out of the meeting in New York was something that President Biden called a critical minerals dialogue. And by that, I think, again, in the economic sphere, as we look at the future economic development of all of our countries, it's very clear that we all need secure access to critical minerals. And so we think, as a very mineral-rich region, there's opportunities for the United States to work with Central Asia to provide U.S. and Western technology to help discover and to help to mine these kind of critical minerals, to make sure that these minerals benefit the people of Central Asia, as well as the countries like the United States and in the global market. So these are all areas, I think, that they identified in New York that we'll be working on for the months to come.
Just to clarify, you just spoke about investment opportunities of Central Asian countries, especially Uzbekistan. So what areas of, let's say, economic sectors would be of interest to the United States to invest more in Uzbekistan?
Well, Uzbekistan in Central Asia probably has the most diversified economy of all of the Central Asian countries. And so there are a number of, I think, economic sectors that are very attractive to Western and particularly to U.S. investment. In recent months, we've seen a major investment by a U.S. energy company called Air Products. They've invested almost $2 billion here in Uzbekistan already. And if I'm not mistaken, President Mirziyoyev met with the chairman of that company in New York, and they announced plans for even more investment in the energy sector. We have investments in the agricultural sector, including in the cotton sector here in Uzbekistan, in construction and mining. So there's companies like Caterpillar and Case New Holland, which produce some of the equipment that's critical to being able to mine minerals and resources. We've got increasingly companies that are interested in the IT sector here in Uzbekistan as well. There's a major U.S. company called EPAM, which has been growing its presence here in Uzbekistan, and I know that Uzbekistan has been increasing its export of IT services to the United States. And so really, it's hard to identify any sector here where there aren't opportunities and where there isn't increasing interest from U.S. companies.
Earlier in September, U.S. Senators Chris Murphy and Todd Young called for repealing the Jackson-Vanik amendments for Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Tajikistan and granting them permanent normal trade relations status. Will the amendment be revoked anytime soon?
So the U.S. administration, the Biden administration, actually believes that the time is right to repeal the Jackson-Vanik amendment. We believe that Uzbekistan has complied with, many years, in fact, for many years now, been in compliance with the requirements of the Jackson-Vanik amendment, which focuses mostly on the freedom of movement, the ability of citizens of Uzbekistan to travel wherever they might want to go. So, unfortunately, at this point, the action lies in the U.S. Congress. Because this is a law, it can only be repealed by an act of Congress. And so I'm pleased to see that there are some draft proposals in Congress to move this issue forward, but I can't predict how and when Congress might be able to act on those proposals.
You just spoke about the freedom of movement in the United States for citizens of Uzbekistan. As far as I know now, most of the visa applications are rejected. What are the reasons for that? Can the situation be changed in any way?
This year, we have actually both interviewed, received a record number of applications from Uzbek citizens interested in traveling to the United States, and we've issued record numbers of visas for Uzbeks who are traveling to the United States. So I think your information is actually incorrect. We're seeing more Uzbeks travel to the United States than ever before. It is true that some applicants, do not receive visas, or their visa applications are unsuccessful, and that is a requirement that the Congress imposes on not just our embassy here, but our embassies around the world, to make sure that the people who are applying to travel to the United States are in fact legitimate travelers who are traveling to the United States for legal purposes. And so we see many Uzbeks traveling to the United States for tourism, many traveling for business, many students traveling to the United States, even Uzbek citizens who are traveling to the United States on work visas. But I think, as you know, at the same time, there are many Uzbek citizens who are traveling illegally to the United States. And so I think it's safe to assume that if people who are willing to travel illegally through very dangerous routes to the United States, many traveling to Central America and then trying to cross overland, the border between Mexico and the United States, I would say that I, really would discourage, your viewers and your readers from considering this. It's very, very dangerous. I think there are people smugglers who are taking advantage of these people and charging very, very high fees, making them promises that they can't guarantee. There's risks en route, and increasingly, especially in the last few months, there's been a real crackdown in terms of making this route a viable one. So at every step along the way, in different countries on the way to the United States, Uzbek travelers who are trying to do this are being turned away which means they may have sold their houses or spent a lot of money for no reason whatsoever. Many are being turned away now at the US border. Many are being detained if they enter the United States, whereas maybe previously they might have been released, but now they're going to be detained and potentially be deported. So I would say that the circumstances are changing, and we would really discourage travelers from traveling illegally to the United States. But as I said, there are legal means to travel to the United States. In addition to the ones I mentioned, I think, as you know, we also have a green card lottery. And we, around the world, we give over 55,000 green cards to people applying from countries like Uzbekistan. And in fact, Uzbekistan has been one of the top countries in terms of applying for the green card lottery. For people who might choose this illegal route to the United States, that might make them ineligible, meaning that it might lead to a permanent ban on them being able to apply for the green card lottery or be able to apply for legal US visas to the United States. So that's another reason why I would discourage any of your viewers or your readers from trying to travel to the United States illegally.
Some of the green card lottery winners, applicants, could not get the chance to have the interview with the embassy. What will happen to them? What will be their applications?
Right. So the way this works is as I said, we have about 50,000 slots for the whole world. There's a lottery that anybody can apply for, and there's no charge to be able to apply to enter the lottery. If you win, and I put this in quotations, if you win the lottery, what that means is you then pass to the next stage in the process where you have to submit documents. Once you submit those documents, then you will be called for an interview at the United States Embassy. All of this depends on those 55,000 slots being available. And so because we don't want slots to go unused, more people win the lottery than are slots that are available. So some years everybody who wins the lottery in Uzbekistan was able to get an interview. Some years we've used up those 55,000 slots around the world before everybody's able to get an interview. So what that means is if you were unable to get an interview, unfortunately, your opportunity that year has passed. You can re-enter the lottery again the next year, but it's a long process, and there's no guarantee, even if your name is selected, that you'll be able to successfully submit your documents and successfully go through an interview. And even when you get the interview at the U.S. Embassy, there's no guarantee that you get the green card visa as well. You have to ensure that the application was filled out correctly and legitimately, that there was no incorrect information provided. I'll give you an example. There are cases where people submit multiple applications and they change the spelling of their name or something on the application in order to increase their chances of winning the lottery. Of course, that is illegal, and if we find that that's the case, then they would be disqualified from when they get to the interview process.
I've been told by some green card winners applicants that main reason for not having the chance of having the interview, because of Russian immigrants coming to Uzbekistan and sitting the interview at the embassy of the United States in Tashkent. Did it affect actually?
Absolutely not. There's a center in the United States that tells the U.S. Embassy here when they can interview a particular applicant. So we had capacity, we had to be able to do more interviews. The problem was that we ran out of, the center in the United States ran out of those 55,000 slots. So it has nothing to do with Russian citizens here in Uzbekistan, coming to apply for embassies at the visa.
The U.S. Embassy is paying particular attention to improving English language teaching in Uzbekistan. Recently, 25 tutors came from the United States for 10 months to help local teachers in teaching English. What outcomes are expected from this and other relevant projects?
So you're correct. We've made major investments in supporting the teaching of the English language here in Uzbekistan. I will say this was at the request of President Mirziyoyev, who announced, a number of years ago, a big initiative to increase the English teaching in schools in Uzbekistan. And so we have been responsive to this. One of the projects we've had has been to work on the English language curriculum that's taught in the schools, and working together with the Ministry of Education, we've updated that curriculum and disseminated the new textbooks and teacher guides to almost every school in Uzbekistan. In addition, we've been working to provide more training to the English teachers at these schools. And so, again, working together with the ministry, we have, over the last couple of years, provided training to 15,000 English teachers at public schools throughout Uzbekistan. The initiative that you just talked about is another initiative that we have, and it's been going on for a number of years as well. It's very important not just to have good materials and to have good English teachers, but it's important to have an opportunity to speak directly with native English speakers. And so we've started to recruit English trainers from the United States to come and work in schools and mostly in universities here in Uzbekistan. We think it's important that they not just be here in Tashkent, but that we send them to every region in Uzbekistan. And so we've been working with universities throughout the country to place these English teachers to work together with the faculty members, the English professors, as well as with the students in these universities. In terms of results, we get very positive feedback from the universities, from the other professors, and from the students. They think it's a terrific opportunity to be able to speak, to have direct interaction with native English speakers, and they've asked us to send more English teachers. And so unfortunately, as you know, 25 is not a huge number. We hope to be able to bring in more teachers. We hope eventually to be able to bring the US Peace Corps back to Uzbekistan, which would be an opportunity to have even more English teachers as well.
Let's talk about Afghanistan. Uzbekistan supports the economic recovery of Afghanistan and calls for the unfreezing of its assets in Western banks for the sake of Afghan people who are living in poverty now. What is the USA's response to the Afghan issue and Uzbekistan's current policy toward this country?
I think the United States and the United States government and the government of Uzbekistan have a very similar policy towards Afghanistan. We both want to see the Afghan economy healthy. We want to avoid any kind of humanitarian disaster that adversely affects the Afghan people. And we want to see long-term security and stability in Afghanistan, because I think it's important to our collective security and it's important to the economic development of the entire region. The problem has been that you have a regime now in Kabul which has ignored its international obligations, has taken measures to restrict the rights of girls and women, has prevented girls from being able to attend school, has prevented women from being able to work in the workplace, and generally has been unwilling to cooperate with the international community so that we can maybe move forward with unfreezing assets. Until then, the United States continues to support the humanitarian needs in Afghanistan by providing critical food assistance and other assistance through the United Nations and other agencies. And we continue to work with the government of Uzbekistan to try to put through dialogue with the regime in Afghanistan to encourage them to be responsible and to take measures that will enable all of us, I think, to take more steps to improve the economic situation and the security in the region.
What commitments do you expect from Afghanistan's current government to be admitted internationally?
So I'm not an expert. I don't know all of the specific commitments that they undertook when agreement they signed with the previous U.S. administration. But I, as an observer, I've seen that instead of moving in the right direction, the regime in Kabul is moving in the wrong direction, including in the ways that I just mentioned, in terms of closing down schools for girls and eliminating employment opportunities for women. Those are just two examples, I think, of policies that we would like to see reversed.
The escalation of tension between the United States and China is having an impact on the economies of Central Asian countries, including Uzbekistan. Could you please tell us where this is going and what should we expect in the future?
It's very clear, and I know that President Biden discussed this with the other presidents of Central Asia in New York, that Central Asia, I think, is suffering from its difficult geography right now and some of the global events happening, in the world. Not just tensions between the United States and China, but also Russia's unprovoked aggression in Ukraine and the impact that that's having on the economy of the region. So we are definitely trying to work with Uzbekistan and the other countries in Central Asia to try to mitigate those economic impacts. As far as the United States relationship with China, I mean, I think if you follow the news, there are ongoing efforts by the United States to have a dialogue with the People's Republic of China and to try to resolve some of the issues that have led to tensions in the past. But in terms of the economic relationship, I mean, I know that Uzbekistan already enjoys a very strong economic relationship with China, and the United States has a very strong relationship with China as well. And so I would hope that these tensions won't have an impact on those relationships.
How would you assess current human rights reforms in Uzbekistan?
I think I would say that there has been tremendous progress here in Uzbekistan in the last several years, particularly since President Mirziyoyev has come to office. I wonder if we would be sitting here having this kind of interview, even just 6 or 7 years ago. So clearly there have been some real improvements in terms of freedom of media and freedom of expression. We've seen tremendous improvements in other human rights areas as well. For example, the elimination of child labor and forced labor, particularly in the cotton harvest. We've seen tremendous progress in terms of elimination of torture. We've seen progress in terms of freedom of religion and the ability of Uzbek citizens, whatever their religion, to be able to freely practice their religion here. But I think there's still more that could be done. And in fact, I think it's probably fair to say that we've seen unfortunately, some steps backwards with regard particularly to freedom of media in the last year or so. I don't know why that's the case. President Mirziyoyev has been very, very clear in his public statements about his support for freedom of media, and not only just his support for freedom of media, but the fundamental role that an independent media plays in democracy, including by exposing corruption. And so, but despite the president's statements, we've still seen some pressure against journalists. We've seen sometimes that pressure is invisible. In fact, it manifests itself in the form of self-censorship. Journalists who choose not to write about stories that maybe are too sensitive. And we've seen it in some court cases against whether it's bloggers or journalists. And I think, while I'm not going to talk about the specific details of each of these court cases or defend the individuals involved, I think it nonetheless, collectively, these kind of prosecutions, I think, send a signal to other journalists that they can't report freely on what they're seeing. And so I'd like to see, frankly, more space for journalists to be able to work freely here in Uzbekistan.
Recently, the embassy posted a video in which you were traveling to work by metro. It was really positive. I really liked it. How often do you use public transport, and how would you assess the public transport network system in Uzbekistan?
I don't use the public transportation system as often as I would like. The metro is not very close to my house, nor is it very close to the U.S. Embassy, and so I would have to walk. But when the weather's nice, I do like to do that from time to time. The metro system here is beautiful. I mean, you've seen there's some individual metro stations, I think, that are, frankly, are works of art and should be museums, not just metro stations. I'd say I have less familiarity with the bus system. I understand that the bus system is also fairly effective, although we're seeing, I think, a lot of traffic, increasing traffic here in Tashkent as well. But I think it's important, and I'm somebody who's spent most of my life living in cities, it's important that we support public transportation. It's important because I think it reduces the burden on the roads. It reduces the impact on air quality when it comes from emissions of vehicles. And so whenever possible, I do like to use public transportation. I do have, however, a very busy schedule. And so whether it's for security reasons or for reasons of scheduling, sometimes I have to confess, sometimes I do take a car.
Mr. Ambassador, I'm honored. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you.
Nice day.